meeting of the Governance Audit Committee 13th of October, which is due to health and safety reasons being held virtually. The meeting is to be recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as practicable following the meeting. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing this meeting from remote locations. Please could everyone ensure that the mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will all have received an electronic copy of the agenda, and I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their cameras on at that point. But I would ask that, with the exception of myself as chair, at all other times you keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference and to ensure the connection remains as stable as possible. If any members and officers wish to raise a point or a question, then they should press the hands up icon on the screen at the bottom right hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and I will come to you in the order I received the requests. Please lower your hand once you have finished speaking, and please note the chat button has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting, and where necessary will mute those not being used. I would also like the officers to ask the officers to introduce themselves as and when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. They too should ensure microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use. I will now proceed to the agenda business. Item 1 on the agenda is apologies for absence. Michael?
Yes, Chair. I received apologies from Andrew Bagley and Sue Davis as well. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for that. Anyone else aware of any other apologies? Item 2 then, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No one showing. There are none. Item 3 then, the approval of the minutes. Approval of minutes for correctness only. Joe, quickly through the minutes. Page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, page 9, and page 10. Someone prepared to move, please, as a correct record?
I move.
Martin
Hughes.
Thank you very much. Did you get that, Michael?
Yes, Chair.
Right, we've got to move in the seconder. Please show if you are not in favour. Raise your hand, because that's the easiest way to do it. Nope, okay, that's carried unanimously. On to item 5 then, which is the Governance and Audit Committee Action Report. I assume this is just for noting, Rachel.
Yes, Chair. If you want, as I said, the purpose of the report today is to provide members an update on the Governance and Audit Action Record. It's to ensure the decisions made by the committee are action implemented, and the action record is then attached to Appendix A. So yes, the recommendation, Chair, is to note the action record and provide any comment upon this.
Okay, that's very kind of you. Any questions, anyone? No show of hands. Can I just ask Nigel just to pick up the issue about the statement of accounts and a likely delay, because I don't think we got a report on it today, but I think it would be useful to raise the issue that there may be a delay in closing the statement of accounts because of the asset issue.
Yes, good morning. Yeah, there's an ongoing discussion in relation with SIPFA in terms of the evaluation of assets. There's been just a lot of discussion back and forth between SIPFA and Audit Wales in terms of how we show balances brought forward in infrastructure assets. There are a number of solutions which I think are being discussed, but one hasn't been agreed as of yet. We were anticipating at the time that we would have had an agreement by the end of September, Obviously, that is gone. So we would hope that it would be resolved over the next few weeks. But until that is resolved, and it's an all Wales issue, or UK issue, in fact, but until that's resolved, I don't think any accounts in Wales will be signed off. So that's sort of outside the control of the council, but it's something obviously we'd like to get resolved as soon as we can. Really. I would say that may, depending on when that is resolved, it could further delay the bringing of the audited accounts back to this committee, but we'll keep you updated as we go along.
Yeah, thank you for that clarity. Obviously, it's a national issue. So as and when there's a resolution, we can bring this forward. The only other suggestion I would make is that if we don't have a scheduled governance and audit committee, whether we just hold a special committee to deal with the accounts to get them signed off for you, ready to go back to council. So if that's okay, if that could be borne in mind.
Yeah, of course.
Lovely, thank you very much. So members will see the recommendation, which is to note the action record. Someone prepared to move, please?
Formally move, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Granville. Someone prepared to second, please?
Second, Simon Griffiths.
Thank you very much. Can I have a show of hands, please? Anyone against all that? Just show. No, thank you very much. That's carried. Item 5 of the report is the Ombudsman's Annual Letter 21/22. Hello, Kelly.
Hi, thank you, Chair. For the purposes of the recording, I'm Kelly Watson, Chief Officer, Legal and Regulatory Services. Members, I'm here today to present you the Ombudsman's Annual Letter for 2021-2022, and that's appended to your report at Appendix 1. As you'll be aware, the Public Services Ombudsman for Wales is independent of all government bodies and has the legal powers to investigate complaints about public services and independent care providers. They also investigate complaints regarding members of local authorities who have breached the Code of Conduct. The Ombudsman reports annually to each council on the number of complaints made to its office. And this year you will see broken down in Appendix A, the number of complaints for Bridgend was 55 compared to 31 in 2020-2021. The Ombudsman in her annual letter, suggests that complaints were suppressed during the pandemic and then have come through in greater numbers as things are easing. The figure for 2021-22 represents 0.37 complaints received per 1,000 residents. Of these, the Ombudsman intervened in 7 of the cases. 1 complaint proceeded to a full investigation and was upheld. 9 were considered out of jurisdiction, 22 were premature, and 16 were closed after initial consideration. The remaining 5 were settled by working with the Ombudsman to agree an early resolution. You'll also see at paragraph 4.9 that 9 Code of Conduct complaints were received against the authorities' councillors during the period. Members, I would ask you to note that the Standards Committee has also received this report, as Code of Conduct issues go to the Standards Committee as opposed to this committee. Unless there's any questions, Chair, take you to the recommendation and ask the committee to note the annual letter. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly, for that. Are there any questions? Oh, Councillor Bledsoe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report itself is certainly in 2 different aspects. One is the Public Service Ombudsman's ability to investigate the authority itself, and the other is to investigate the activities of the elected councillors, as well as those elected councillors at Town and Community Council. I did actually watch the Standards Committee meeting that Kelly presented this to, and I took on board a lot of what was said in that. It's a strange dichotomy, because a complaint can go to the Ombudsman about the local authority when all other avenues have been exhausted and a full complaints procedure has been conducted. However, a complaint can go to the Ombudsman about a councillor on a whim and potentially a disagreement on social media. So there's a strange, weird situation there. But what I would like to do, Chair, if possible, is concentrate on the aspect of the complaints about the authority rather than the councillors, because I think that's what this committee is here to do, and Standards is for the other side. My background in work is dealing in complaint resolution, and in principle, a journey to the Ombudsman by a resident should only be after all potential avenues of resolution have been exhausted by the authority and the complainant. And I do take on board the figures on there. I think it's 22 which were decided to be premature, which I can only assume had been because the proper process had not been followed between the authority and the complainant. However, I'm of the mind and the view that a complaints process is an opportunity to resolve rather than just listen to a complaint, and to work with complainants to try and stop it getting to the Ombudsman in the first place. And I'm wondering whether there's an opportunity to visit the process. I don't know enough about the process at this moment in time, but is there an opportunity within our structure of complaints process to try and look for resolution? I'm speaking as an individual who went through this process with a different local authority, so I know the process quite well, and I am aware of the opportunities throughout that process to try and seek amicable resolution before it even reaches the Ombudsman stage. I am concerned that one complaint is upheld. I don't know if there was any financial recourse to the complainant in that. It's not detailed in this report, and I don't know if it can be detailed in this report. However, any kind of financial payment is a risk to the council. So, you know, my kind of view on this is, do we need to look at our processes? Can we look at our complaints process with a view to stopping things getting to this point? Because that has to be our drive and our ambition, because an Ombudsman's complaint against the authority should be an absolute last resort. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that long question. Kelly?
Apologies.
No, that's all right, don't worry.
Thank you, Chair. We have got a complaints policy which is reviewed annually. It comes to this committee to be reviewed. I can't remember on your forward work plan when it's due. I think possibly January. There is a working group set up to look at complaints more generally in the authority, because we have a corporate complaints team who deal with the formal and the formal stage of the complaints. Individual departments deal with complaints that come into them, and also there's a social services complaints department. So there is a working group set up being led by Phil O'Brien, which is looking to gather data, or not to bring the complaint services together, but to gather the data on those complaints so that can be reported to you. What I would say is that a number of complaints are dealt with informally before they even reach the corporate complaints team. So I manage the corporate complaints team. I know that generally by the time things have escalated to that stage, they have been through a long process with the individual service areas. Then obviously we have stage 1 and stage 2, and it's only once stage 2 has been concluded with no resolution that people have the opportunity to go to the Ombudsman. So these 22 that have been referred to the Ombudsman, there are a lot of other complaints that have come before that. They're not necessarily all upheld, some are not upheld. Some of them are very basic complaints, I would describe in the basic category. Others are more complex, and others are very detailed complaints. So we're talking about complaints about a whole spectrum of things here. Some, you probably also get as a member referral to come in. Sorry, Councillor Bledsoe, was there a second part to that question?
Not massively. It's just, as I say, that desire to do everything we can to stop it getting to that point. It's just my background. My background is that a complaint is an opportunity to resolve, rather than dealing with it as a complaint. It's an opportunity to redress and build relationships with people who feel aggrieved. And it's just my personal opinion that when a member of the public or a resident of ours gets to the point that it goes to that Ombudsman, that we've kind of failed is a strong word, but missed an opportunity is possibly a better way of looking at it, to seek that resolution. And we don't have the figures in front of us of how many complaints don't get to that point, so I've got nothing to mark it against. That's all.
If I can just give you now the figures I'm going to quote you are they're very general, they're not going to be specific enough for your needs, but these are the files that have been opened by my corporate complaint team this year, 21-22. So when something's referred to them, they obviously open a file. Some of these don't go anywhere, and these also include FOIs, which, as you can imagine, are very high. But the figure on the number of files opened by that team in that year was 1,742. As I said, they are not all complaints because a majority of them will be FOIs. So I think when you consider that only 22 of those have gone to the Ombudsman, I think, you know, that there is quite a bit of resolution going on before they get to that stage.
Thank you for that, Kelly. Bayadun?
I think so, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone on the call. So initially, my concern was what exactly the Ombudsman is actually expecting from us to comment on with respect to that letter. But I think that I like what the councillor has actually said with respect to some of the questions is asked, and what that led me to is I'm a bit concerned actually about 22 complaints out of 55, because I'm not sure what exactly that figure is. 55 complaints for Bridgend. So because 22 over 55 is actually is substantial. So the data seems, maybe what we should be doing actually going forward is that we have the data of total complaints that the council received vis-a-vis the total complaint that I went to the Ombudsman, and we can then be able to have like some sort of KPI to know how well we are doing resolving issues before they go to the Ombudsman. That's probably what I think maybe management or leadership of the council can consider, so that we can really assess what's really happening. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Martin Hughes?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just one question and one observation. First of all, the question is, I noticed that the deadline for responses was initially the 30th of September. If we have a new date for that for responses. The observation then is that basically we seem to be exactly on the All Wales average. I think we are on 0.37 complaints per thousand against the average of 0.36. But what does stand out is the huge variation between local authorities. The best is 0.19, which is half of the situation in Bridgend, going up to 0.72, which I think is in Ceredigion. So that indicates that, unless residents in particular authorities have, particular issues which cause spikes, that in dealing and handling with complaints, which is quite interesting. I think the point to be made from that is that there does seem to be some lessons to be learned from some of the other local authorities, particularly Torfaen, with their low rate, and it might be worth just making an approach to them to see what the situation is, and if we can try to work out why that should be. So that's my observation, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Councillor Griffiths?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think my question is around how we inform our residents about the complaints procedure itself. I mean, I've gone through the website to look at what we publish, and one of the things you mentioned, Kelly, was around stage 1 and stage 2, which obviously is substantially different the way that we deal with that. But I don't find any mention of that externally, so I do wonder whether we are giving our residents sufficient information about the process. So that's the sort of the question. So, but I would observe that I think, from what I've heard today, I think this is good best practice that we're exhibiting. I think our number, average for Wales, is pretty good as well. I mean, I come from commercial organisations, and specifically, I recall some times at a big telco where they had a very large number of chairman level complaints. They put a team in to deal with those, and they reduced them significantly by like 80% within a year of putting a team in place. But it sounds to me as if you already have that team in place with the corporate complaints team. But I would ask for an additional piece of information if we can around about just to separate out those what I would call corporate level complaints away from the FOIs. So we actually have a clearer idea of exactly how many are going into that level 2 stage, and then how many of those are resolved at that stage, and how many subsequently go on to the Ombudsman.
Thanks for that, Councillor Griffiths. Are there any other questions? Are there any comments from, Kelly, did you want to respond?
Yeah, if I can just respond on that, but we will have that data to break down. It's just that I haven't got it in front of me today. I've only got the cumulative data. That does get reported to you, as I said, it will be on your work programme for that additional report to come to you specifically on complaints, where we can also try and break it down then to stage 1 and stage 2. But I just wanted to respond on the point about making the public aware. I think what we'll do is we look at the website to try and make it a bit clearer there, but just to reassure members that if somebody does complain to the authority, whether that's through the front desk or directly to a service area, when a response goes out to that complaint, there is then a link put on there with an explanation about how our formal complaints process works. So they're always told that if they're not satisfied, they can then go through the formal process, just to reassure members that we are making the public aware of that. We will make it clearer on the website. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kelly. Is anyone else? Councillor Griffiths, is that a legacy hand?
No, if I could just comment. So I understand there's a balance here that the more you tell people about the process, the more people are likely to pick it up and actually try to use it. So there's always a balance between transparency and pragmatism, I think. But I think we need to have a little bit more information than we have at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Any other comments? Any comments from anyone? Kelly, can I just raise a couple of issues? I think obviously there is good practice across local authorities, and the point Martin made, you can learn, but actually people most probably can learn from Bridgend as well, despite what the figures are, because on many occasions some of these issues are one matter complaints, so you'll get a lot of complaints for one issue. And the fundamental point for me always is, how do you define a complaint? Because it's not nationally defined, I don't think, across all authorities. So you've got an issue is, firstly, what is a complaint? Clearly, our responsibility is to ensure that the process is correct, not looking at individual complaints, etc. And I think that's something we could do well. The only comment I make there is we're receiving this Ombudsman's annual letter today. There's a disconnect between the report which goes on corporate complaints and compliments and this letter. So I'm just wondering whether you can consider bringing both to the same committee at the same date, because people can read them then into say, right, they get all the figures you've just said. So, we've had X number of corporate complaints. Stage 1 is Y, stage 2 is Z, stage 3 is whatever. They can see then what the Ombudsman's received from that. So members get a complete picture. So rather than have, I think the complaints one went in March this year, rather than do it in March, can we just have it at one stage at one point in time within the year? Can you just look at that? The second point I'd like to make is, and again, it all goes back to the report, which presumably we could have seen in March, and that would have been maybe useful to have attached, but we didn't. Councillor Bledsow's point, whatever a complaint is, it's a learning exercise, and I think directorates need to learn from that. And I think if you can bring all those complaints together, however many, and say, look, housing received whatever, or the bin collections received that. So did the authority learn from pushing it forward? I pick up the point about what Simon said in regards to splitting down FOIs from complaints. That's essential, because FOI is completely different in reality to complaints. And I think the other thing is, just picking up what Councillor Bledsoe says, just because a complaint goes to the Ombudsman, it doesn't mean this authority has failed. Actually, what it could mean is at stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, everything's been done correctly. It's just that the complainant doesn't accept what the council says. Now, obviously, the Ombudsman's there as the arbiter, and then you will either get it upheld or dismissed. So I think, in some respects, I don't think councils should be afraid of complaints. I think they, as a council, they should be seen as a learning exercise. But ultimately, we don't back down, because on issues where we do whatever is right, you know, there may be a statutory crime, etc., which public don't understand sometimes. I think we just need to carry on that basis. But I think if we could bring both, these reports together, that would, in my opinion, benefit the committee. So okay, good. Councillor Bletson. Oh, sorry, Kelly, go on.
I just wanted to, just for clarity, that figure I quoted, that was just the number of files opened by that particular team. So I'm not trying to sort of say that's the whole number of complaints or otherwise. I know there's a clear distinction. It's just that was the data I had in front of me this morning. In terms of bringing the report, obviously this comes when we receive it from the Ombudsman, and I think there's been a slight delay this year because we didn't have meetings for a period of time. So do you want to delay the report I would usually bring now in January or March time to coincide with this next year?
Yes.
But that would mean
that would be my view, and I only say that I chair, as you know, Newport, and I chair the Vale, and we're doing it both at the same time, because you can see the trends, and you know, going through. Whereas now you've got a report in March, which all due respect you brought, and we got this one. So you know, raising questions that Councillor Bledsoe raised, you need to tie it up. You need to get that whatever it is, the platinum, golden, or brass thread through it. So. Is that okay?
Shall I bring an interim? I'm just conscious that if I do that, you're not going to have anything on complaints for 12 months.
Well, just bring a 6-monthly report, just a quick update.
I'll just bring an interim report in sort of March time, and then we'll match the cycle up next time.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Bledsoe.
No, it's fine. I was going to give way to Kelly anyway, because I felt she needed to answer your questions. So it's not a problem. I'm just wondering, as part of this process and in line with what we're here to do as a committee, is it possible for us to understand and have reported to us possibly the costs of dealing with complaints? And I'm not talking about the payouts that may have been referred to, but the actual cost of processing complaints, and specifically ones that go to the Ombudsman.
My own view is, and I'd be guided by Kelly here, is that is a matter in some respects needs to either go to one of the scrutiny committees or to council. You know, obviously we're here to look at the process, not get into the nitty-gritty of all these issues. If we're satisfied the process is robust, then it's a matter for the council then to decide, you know, cost, etc.
It's just, I'm happy to be corrected on this. I genuinely am. It's just looking at this process as we are talking about, is that if we decide that processes need changing, that may be based on how much it's costing us to administer it, and if we can have at least an understanding of what it costs for this authority to deal with complaints. I know this is I'll try that again. Specifically around those that have gone to the Ombudsman. You know, we are having briefings at the moment on budgets and how we can tighten belt in all places. And if as a committee we can look at a process that helps to tighten the costs on dealing with complaints, then that may be a way of doing that. So it's just a question. And again, I'm happy to be led by Kelly on it. It's just to give us a more overarching picture of what is put in front of us today. And I just feel that costs are part of that, not the only part, but part of it.
Can I just ask Kelly? Sorry, I said about scrutiny. Is this a matter that could go to the Democratic Services Committee for? Does this fall under their remit?
I don't think this would fall under them. It would need to go to a scrutiny. What I would say is that I think costing it would be quite difficult because, so for example, my corporate complaints team, they use time recording because they fall under the legal teams. So I could probably quite easily get you a breakdown of what the corporate complaints team are spending on each case. But I think that would be more difficult for the service areas. I'm not sure they would time record in the same way that legal staff do.
I think the difficulty again, sorry, maybe Councillor Brett, so, you know, you've got an issue that Kelly and her team can't control the number of complaints that come in. So ultimately, one year you may have 10 and everyone thinks, oh, we need to cut the team. And another year we got 1,000 when all of a sudden we got to boost the team by additional members of staff. I think it's how long is a piece of string. But I think, you know, if Kelly can take that back and maybe look at which scrutiny committee could have a quick look at this, if it could be put in their work programme and could be discussed with the chair of the scrutiny committee, and maybe, you know, that can be taken forward. And if someone's looking at the complaints process, which you've said there's a working group anyway, that will be reported somewhere as well. So I think once it's reported, wherever it's reported, then clearly this committee can see what the outcome of that was. Thanks,
Yeah, I
Kelly.
can take that away.
Thank you. Councillor Bledsoe, is it a legacy hand? Thank you. Councillor Williams?
Thanks, Chair. Just as a rider to that, I'm chair of the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So if if you'd like that to come to us, Kelly and Chair, we'd be happy to consider it. That's great. Thanks, Councillor Williams. That would be, I think it would be useful. And again, it would give the other members of the authority some reassurance that it's being, it's being dealt with appropriately and people are reacting to it. So thank you for that. Okay, I think we've done that to death now. We've got the recommendation before us, which is to note the annual letter attached at Appendix A. I don't think there are any comments to go back to the Ombudsman, apart from we know what was said. And if you can pick up those other points, Kelly, that, you know, about bringing an interim report in 6 months and bringing then your annual report with the Ombudsman report at the same time, that would be marvellous. Can I have someone to move that, please?
I'll formally move the officer's recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Granville. Someone prepared second?
Yes,
I'll
I
second that,
Mark
Simon.
Daniels.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Can I
Chair.
just have a show of hands? Is anyone against it? No. Thank you very much. Thank Kelly. Next report then is agenda item 6, which is the All Wales Governance and Audit Committee reports. Samantha?
Thank you, Chair. We have quite a few reports today, so to break the monotony of my voice, I'm going to invite my colleague Rachel to talk through the financial audit work update, please.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, great. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Chair. Just by way of introduction, I'm Rachel Freitag. I'm the audit manager for Audit Wales, looking at financial audit at Bridgend. So the first sort of section of our quarterly update does focus on the financial audit work. So I'll just run through that quickly before handing back to Sam, who's far more capable to talk through all the performance audit bits. It's quite a factual report. It does what it says on the tin. So quite a quick update from us today on this one. Last year's grants work all done and dusted. I think we've probably previously reported that to you. The audit of the 21-22 financial statements that Nigel touched on earlier is very nearly there. The work is substantially complete. There might be one or two bits of information outstanding. The caveat to that is this issue with infrastructure assets, where we are waiting for either a code update from SIPFA, or I think Welsh Government are also looking into a statutory override. So we need one of those two things to be concluded before we can issue any of our opinions. So that is holding up all of our audits across Wales, and it is also an issue across the board in England as well. So, it's certainly not a Bridgend only issue. But the good news is, once that's done, the audit's pretty much there. So, we can hopefully action the outcome of that pretty quickly. The audits of the Porthcawl Harbour Authority and Coitridge Crematorium Joint Committee are both done. They were certified back in September by the Auditor General. I think the letter for the harbour is on the agenda today for information a bit later on. And then finally, our audit of the grants returns, that normally takes place after the accounts audits are completed. So we're starting to sort of scope across Wales who's got what grants, so we can start thinking about that work. So that'll be starting shortly. I'll pass you back over to Sam.
You're on mute, Sam.
Sorry. I was just saying thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rachel. So in terms of the performance audit work programme, so the assurance and risk assessment work, that is ongoing, but I would say most of the work itemised is actually being scoped. The governance theme, though, regarding the setting of wellbeing objectives, I am about to discuss options for delivering that work with officers. I have an appointment this Friday, so we hope to proceed with that very shortly. Then the thematic review of unscheduled care. We sent the audit approach and project brief to officers this summer, but this work is now about to start. It's a cross-sector piece of work. The bulk of the work will focus on health, and it's centred around the back end and the patient flow out from hospital. And we're looking to set up that piece of work imminently. So there's that. Then the thematic review digital, that piece of work we are currently scoping, and that's likely to happen in the spring of next year. We're hoping to actually report in March 2023. Then the local project, looking at performance management arrangements, we've completed the field work and we're in the process now of sort of refining our draft report before we have that informal conversation with the council, before that report is finalised, and then obviously we can bring that to this committee. So that's the performance audit work programme. Then in terms of the local government studies, I just wanted to draw your attention to the poverty study, just to say that this report, the publication is imminent. I think it's likely to happen within the next couple of weeks. And I just wanted to draw the committee's attention to a good practice exchange event, easy for me to say, regarding tackling poverty in Wales. And I understand that there are lots of external speakers, and Welsh Government will be conducting a workshop just to look at, delegates' responses really to that wicked problem of poverty in Wales. So moving further down, we have the Care Inspectorate Wales. They've recently published a report on the performance evaluation inspection of children's services. The fieldwork, I understand, took place around May time, and that report was published late this summer. And then further down, in terms of the national reports, the recently published reports I wanted to draw your attention to are the equality impact assessments, more than a tick box exercise, and a couple of reports to Welsh Government. So I don't propose to go through this in any more detail, but I'll hand that back to you, Chair, if I may.
No, thank you, Samantha. That's great, the updates. Back to the members. Are there any questions? No questions. Councillor Griffiths. Councillor Bledsoe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if Councillor Griffiths did have his hand up or not, or whether it was a mistake. I'm not sure.
Well, it's down now.
If he did, I'm happy to defer. That's all.
No, it's down. So that's why he put his hand up and then it went down. So
no problems.
It's yourself.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair. Just to double check, we are under item 6 at the moment, and I can bring up issues that I have over concerns on Appendix B in the reports.
Let's just go to Appendix B, the strategic workforce.
Yeah.
Plan. It all depends what your question is.
Just that I'm quite concerned about the contents of the findings and the
recommendations.
Yeah, well, the whole section, to be honest. And I'm just wondering how this happened. Obviously, we have had a situation where we've been working under extreme circumstances with COVID, but councillors at the moment are getting detailed presentations from finance officers in relation to savings that we have to make, but we see quite a clear black hole here in the fact that we haven't had something in place that the Audit Wales feels that we should have something in place, and the recommendations are there that we need to get it in place. And I'm just trying to get a clear understanding as to how this didn't happen, what's caused it, and how we propose to remedy it.
My view would be this isn't the right place to raise these issues here. What we receive are the recommendations clearly from Audit Wales. There needs to be a formal response now from the council to these hopefully I'm right here, Samantha. There needs to be a formal response from the council. So presumably either the executive will look at it or the cabinet will look at it. And then it will need to be sent out to the relevant department to put in place an action plan as to how they're going to address these recommendations, which I assume will be then tracked by either one of the scrutiny committees or one of the other committees. I think what we need, Councillor Betso, is the reassurance, that's all I will want, is that they're being dealt with and who's dealing with it, so that we can have as an assurance that they're being taken seriously. And I think people like yourselves, who are the councillors, will deal with these issues in a different place. That's my initial view. I don't know whether Kelly's got a view on it, but clearly it's not a matter for us to go through this and pick it up. I think those discussions need to be in another place. Samantha? Sorry.
Yes, go on, fine.
I was just going to say, I was hoping to discuss that item as a separate item, and then invite officers to respond.
I'm happy to do that, and I'm happy to go with whichever is the best way, because I had to read this part twice last night because I was very concerned by what I was reading. If this is the right place but a separate discussion, I'm happy to do that. If this is the wrong place and some other committee has to look into this and some department has to look into this, I feel I would like to place on record my severe concerns on reading it and my severe desire for it to be looked into by whomever is the right person or the right committee to look into it. If it's here and Samantha wants to do this under a different discussion, I'm happy to, but I have very severe concerns over it.
I think that's right, Councillor. We as a committee can say we're concerned, but we're in the infancy at the moment. They've just received a report. So it's going to need to go through a process through the council. So I think whilst we can all say, well, this is, this is completely inappropriate, but we await what the council decides to do about it before it comes back to us. Councillor Williams, sorry, Samantha.
I was going to say, I was just going to talk through some of the key points and give a bit of context to the report, but I think it's probably worth my saying at this point that we do intend to issue the council with a management response form. So that means we can then discuss with the council what they propose to do and then consider that in our future work programmes. But should I talk through some of the key points, Chair?
Well, Councillor Williams, Alex Williams, your hands up and down. Did you want to comment or make a question?
Sorry, Chair. I'll defer to Samantha now because she's going to go through some of the detailed responses to the report. I was just going to mention that strategic workforce planning is on the agenda of the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, but I'll defer to Samantha now.
Thank you, Chair.
Just check whether there's any other questions on sort of part A of the report, the Appendix A. No, Samantha. Oh, Biodun.
Apologies. Actually, is for B. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Keep your powder dry a minute, Samantha.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So it's probably worth my just introducing the fact that the fieldwork took place in December 2021 and January 22. It's also worth noting in terms of context that, we all understand the council has been operating during a period of crisis due to the pandemic, and at the same time was responding to other critical issues in a specific service area. So I just wanted to say we appreciate the time and commitment given by officers to enable us to produce this report at the time. But in terms of the focus of the review, we wanted to establish how well the council was strategically planning for the use of its workforce, how it was monitoring the use of its workforce, and how it was reviewing and evaluating the effectiveness of these arrangements. And I think one of the main points here is that the council has been acting to respond to some of these significant workforce issues that we all know have been around, for the last couple of years. So, there's been an immediate shift of staff to working from home. And where this wasn't possible, officers had to manage and oversee some of those stringent COVID restrictions that were in place at the time. Lots of redeployment of staff across the organisation to respond to the crisis, and all of this at a time of increasing levels of sickness absence. And then also to say that there are some significant challenges across the public sector. And I think this is nationally in terms of recruitment and retention of staff in many areas, and some of those, quite critical areas such as social services. But the key action for the council, obviously, as we've said, is to develop that corporate workforce plan, really to determine that optimal level of workforce that's needed, and that's to deliver the wellbeing objectives, satisfy that plethora of legislative requirements, and to continue delivering a range of the statutory and discretionary services to its residents. So in terms of the recommendations, I'll just paraphrase. So we want the council to develop its strategic approach to its workforce. And again, that's to support its future service delivery in that operating model, which I don't think has been determined yet and agreed upon. And then once that's been agreed, it needs to decide how best to measure the impacts and affordability of those plans and actions. And especially important, we've got this, pretty dynamic external environment that we find ourselves in. We've got COVID, Brexit, fuel crisis, inflation, and the uncertainty really that all of these elements bring. And then with recommendation 3, it's important for the council, and I think we've already touched on, in terms of complaints about the lessons, about learning, and how important it is to understand what others are doing in this arena, because all councils are in the same boat, and just about sharing the data and practices and making the most of lessons that have, that Bridgend Council has learned and others. And hopefully then find some opportunities. And it's worth mentioning, as Audit Wales, we provide some of these good practice events. We have blogs, we have case studies in our national and local government study report. So hopefully, there is an avenue where the council can explore, those lessons and learning.
Yeah.
So that's all I wanted to say on the report. So I'll pass it back to you, Chair, if I may.
No, thank you for that, Samantha. I think before I ask Councillor Griffiths to come in, it sets the scene, because how difficult this has been with COVID, and we're going into a different storm now, aren't we, with public service cuts, which may or may not come. So I think this is an organic process, really. And whilst, as I said, I note what Councillor Bledsoe said, I think we've got to give time for the authority to respond to this. If they've only just had it, what I would be asking, subject to what members say, is that we note the contents of it with some concern, but we see what the management response is, and maybe we get a response back from the council within, say, 6 months to see what the action plan is, etc., etc. But, and I think, as Councillor Bledsoe said, the issue for me is you're going to go through some very difficult times in the next couple of months, because you're going to be setting your budget and everything else. So there's lots to be weighing up here. Councillor Griffiths?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think, I read through the whole report a couple of times, and I think the part that kept jumping out to me, not only in this section, but across all of the reports, was there's a framework being developed. We are doing this, we are doing things. So there are lots of things that are actually in flight at the moment, and many of those are to replace policies which expired in 2021. Now, I completely understand the pandemic, why these things have slipped. But what I don't get a sense of at the moment is that we have a list of our strategic plans that we need, workforce being one of them, asset management being another one, and when they expire and when we plan to actually get replacements in place. So I wonder whether I could ask for a catalogue of our most strategic plans with that information on them, so that we can at least have a view from a governance perspective of what our complete set of plans ought to be, and what position we are in with them, whether we have something, whether it's expired or whether it's in progress. So I think what I'm saying this is the audit, I think, has alerted us to a problem which has been there for some time, and that's a retrospective problem, obviously, because it's 9 months out of date already, that view. But what I'm trying to say is, from a governance perspective, how can we, as a governance team, get better clarity on exactly where we are with all of these top-level policies and strategies?
Okay, Councillor Griffiths, thank you for that. Biden.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Right. In reference to the letter from the auditors, there was a specific reference to the Governance and Audit Committee. That's section 33. Right. So that tends to address the concern around whether I should even come to GAC or not. So for me, what that talks to is the fact that the risk that we know as management should actually come to GAC for consideration. And I'm concerned that, it seemed not to have been an issue that was mentioned to at GAC or brought to the attention of GAC, whether we're the ones to deal it or not, because these are actually meant to be a risk or that should have been escalated. So from a governance perspective, we need to consider how we can make sure issues of concern that we are dealing are also brought to the appropriate quarters for discussion. Thank you.
Councillor Bledsoe.
Sorry, Chair. I was flipping between this meeting and the report itself. I was stuck on page 54 and then couldn't come back to it.
Okay.
Look, I would support your proposal that we note the contents of it, but we express, I mean, from my own personal opinion, serious concerns, not just concerns, but serious concerns, because, as Councillor Griffiths has pointed out, this is an historical lapse, not a current lapse, and we are working towards it, and it all predates our being here. However, the workforce, and there was something in the press the other day that social services have had to spend over £1 million on agency staff. Well, it would be very easy to say that, well, we don't have a workforce plan in place that could have contributed towards that, and that's where this scrutiny comes in. I'm not saying it has been the major contribution, but without a plan in place, you can't work forwards. We have to have this plan in place. It's integral to us operating as a local authority with the millions of pounds that we spend, that we have a plan in place. So to have a period of time where that plan wasn't in place is of serious concern to me. So I would support your suggestion, Mr. Chair, to note it, but to pass forward that this matter needs looking into as to how it happened and what contributed to it, and how, most importantly, we can ensure it never happens again, because that's fundamentally what we're here for, is putting things in place to make sure things like this don't happen again.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Beck. Just comment before I bring Caris in. As I keep reiterating, we got to give the authority time to respond to this report. I take on board fully what you said, because obviously lots of you, and I wasn't here until only in May this year. We've got to give the authority time to respond. We've got to give the executive time to consider what they're going to do to deal with these issues. Clearly, they've got two. I don't know whether they're statutory recommendations, but they are recommendations which they need to deal with. And they got recommendations in the other reports that Samantha is going to read out to us shortly. And they need to put that in the pot with everything else. And I think you, Councillor Betts, and other elected representatives on this committee will have their opportunity to discuss this in a different place as well. So let's wait and see what the management say. Let's see what the executive got to say. And hopefully, if we have another report back, say in 6 months, budget will have been set. Hopefully strategic workforce plan is in place, etc., etc. So, the authority can see it all in the mix at the same time. Caris.
So, Mr. Chair, just say that's exactly what I was agreeing with you on.
Yeah,
what
thank
you just
you.
said there. That's what I'm agreeing with you on.
Thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. Caris.
Thank you, Chair. Just for the sake of the recording, I'm Caris Lord. I'm the Chief Officer for Finance, Performance and Change. I think it's a very interesting discussion, isn't it, about how we deal with these reports that come in from our regulators and where they're best placed. And we have been having that discussion as officers. I suppose what I just wanted to reassure you is that I think they need to come to this council, this particular committee, because of the governance issues around them, and because this is the main reporting tool as well for Audit Wales to bring in their reports. As you say, we are developing action plans. My suggestion would be very much along the same as yours, is that actually they should be monitored in the relevant scrutiny committee. But just to add to that, what we're also doing is developing a tracker of all of the regulatory comments that we get in from whichever regulator that is. And I would suggest that is fed back to here, so that the members on this committee have oversight of the actions that we're taking and whether or not we're keeping to our deadlines and what it is that we've agreed that we will do. And we could bring that back to you then, I would suggest, maybe on a 6-monthly basis with regards to that action. So from a governance and a process point of view, you're reassured that the issues are being dealt with appropriately and in a timely manner.
Yeah, thank you for that, Caris. I think what I didn't want to do is overburden you with a 3-monthly report. I think, you know, you need time to settle this down and actually get things in place and actually be given the time to actually deliver, rather than rush, because you've got a huge agenda. I think people need not underestimate the agenda you have got to deal together with the councillors of this authority. You know, that I think that would be ideal, subject to members accepting it. Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so completely agree, and thank you, Caris. I think that's a very good step forward. If I could just to add to that, a list of all of the strategies that we actually are trying to maintain, because as you say, there are a very large number of them, and it's quite difficult for us as councillors and committee members as well to keep track of everything that we ought to be doing. So if in addition to the actual items that you're trying to fix, we also have then a higher level list of these are all of the strategic documents that we as a council require to put forward.
Happy to do that, Chair. That's fine.
Thank you, Caris. Do we want to go on to Appendix C? Or is it the same issues, really?
Shall I just give a very brief synopsis, Chair?
Yeah.
Okay, so just to say that this is the Springing Forward Assets Report, and just to reiterate, again, this fieldwork took place in December 2021 and January 2022, and I just want to say again about, you know, the context the council was operating in, you know, a time of crisis, and with the corporate landlord staff, you know, they were overseeing the application of the COVID health and safety implications across the council's estate. And in addition to that, they had their own service constraints, you know, in terms of staff redeployment and sickness absence and the recruitment and retention challenges. But in terms of the main point, we want to say that the council has made positive progress in delivering its asset management plans. But I suppose it's worth my just running through the recommendations. Oh, and I am so sorry, there is a typo. The recommendation 1 should not say strategic workforce planning, that should say strategic asset management planning. So I do apologise for that. So in terms of the first recommendation, I suppose, you know, once that future service delivery model has been determined and that optimal level of resource that we touched upon in the previous report has been established, I suppose that then will in turn influence the property needs, which would then be expressed in a medium and longer term plan that we would expect to correspond with those workforce plans and the medium term financial plan. And especially, I suppose, you know, since the field work now more than ever, you know, the carbon net zero challenges and the spiral energy costs are probably a big factor there. So then in terms of the second recommendation, this is regarding the statutory building compliance, and we fed this back to Corporate Management Board, you know, expressing our concerns, and this was going back to last February, but this data relates to a point in time. I think it was at the end of December 21, and it was reported in January 2022. And I just want to say that since this report, we do understand that that performance has improved. And again, this is further reflected in the Assurance and Risk Assessment report, which is the next item. Then in terms of recommendation 3, because of the big change that the council is going through and will continue to go through, it's probably beneficial that they consider revisiting performance measures, those measures that will better support assessment of that future services delivery model, and then future iterations of their medium-term financial plan, and perhaps introduce qualitative measures such as employee engagement and property occupiers in terms of workspace satisfaction. And then finally, recommendation 4, I think, again, similar to workforce, there are benefits to exploring what others are doing in this space, operating under some of these exceptional circumstances, in terms of costs of occupancy, utilisation, maybe benchmarking across peer groups, locally, nationally, or even internationally. You can have some valuable insights. But I think that's all I wanted to say there, Chair, if that's okay.
Thank you, Samantha. Are there any questions for Samantha? I think this is really the same issues as previously in regards to, again, we note these and await a management response. But Councillor Griffiths?
Thank you, Chair. I really do want to pick up on Samantha's points there about the performance management aspects of this. And I know in the cost committee, we have started to look at the performance framework. And I think this just re-emphasises how important it is for us to get the right measures in there. And I think that's still a process that is open at the moment within the council, but I believe that we should be able to get to that this year. But I would encourage again officers to take into account, obviously the audit statements here, but also the councillors' desire to make sure that we have the appropriate performance measures in place to drive our future service delivery model. But I'm sure that's being done, but I think from a council perspective, I really want to emphasise that we completely support that and we really want to get the right measures in place.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Okay, Caris, can we again maybe have the update on this in 6 months' time? That would be, again, a good way forward. Appendix D, Samantha, did you want to do Appendix D? Have we lost Samantha? No.
I didn't realise I'd both my camera and microphone turned off, which is not very helpful. So my apologies. The Assurance and Risk Assessment report. So this is a summary, basically, of some of the key findings and outcomes from our review in 21-22. Chair, should I pause for questions after each section in the report?
Yeah, that would be lovely, I think.
Okay. So in terms of the financial position, we consider the council to be well placed to manage and maintain its financial resilience. It has healthy levels of reserves, and until recently, it's met most of its savings targets and underspent its budgets. But again, I think I'm reiterating the circumstances that we find ourselves in. The council is operating in a complex and changing external environment. It's picking up challenges arising from the aftermath from COVID, and that in itself is resulting in increasing levels of demand, complexity of demand for some services, inflation, unplanned increases in costs, the fuel crisis. I could go on and on. So basically, we understand the financial resilience and the risks, basically, for future budget rounds, and they will continue to be challenging. And I just wanted to say that this is a national picture for councils.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on the financial position? No? Okay. Local government elections.
Okay, so implications of the Local Government and Elections Act. Well, just to say, I'll keep this brief because I know there's an item on the agenda today. Just to see that, the corporate self-assessment is included in these papers. So we just found that the council is developing and implementing aspects of the Act. We note the appointment of a policy and public affairs officer, which is really good to move the process forward. But we also recognise that there is still some work to do to fully meet the requirements of the Act.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions? No? Carbon reduction?
Okay, carbon reduction plans. So we found the council has a draft carbon reduction strategy. And again, similar to councils across Wales, it hasn't yet fully determined the resources. Sorry, I'll try again. It hasn't fully determined the resources it needs to deliver it, nor how others will contribute to its delivery. So basically, the council knows what it wants to do, but it hasn't really determined yet an affordable and collaborative plan to deliver it.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Griffiths, I see your hand now.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think that this is one of the points that jumped out to me as being of quite substantial challenge to the council over the next 8, almost 7 years now, if we're to meet the targets in 2030. And these are the type of changes which take some time to put in place. And given the call for urgent action pretty much from the Welsh Government on this, I'm not sure at the moment whether we have high enough visibility of our progress on this. In the performance framework that we do have, nearly all of the green measures are down inside the Communities Directorate, which obviously has a place in doing this. But I do feel that we should be recommending that that if we are to meet these targets in 2030, we need corporate level ownership of a number of these targets at the chief executive level. So my question would be, how do we, as an organisation, make sure that we incentivize isn't quite the right word, but we are focused on making the changes now. Given the cost of living crisis, this will become much harder over the next few years, but it doesn't make it any less important. And there's an interplay also between how green we are and actually how much we pay for energy. So I think that I'm unhappy at the moment about the level of corporate responsibility, and I'm not talking about director level here. I'm really talking about the chief exec level. I'd like the chief exec to be very cognizant of where we are in this and to be driving forward against this green target that we have.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Janine, did you want to comment?
Yes, please, if I could, Chair. For the purposes of the recording, I'm Janine Nightingale, the Corporate Director for Communities. I think that Councillor Griffiths has made some very good points there. We are fortunate enough now to be in a position where we've consulted on our 2030 strategy, which is very different from when the audit took place. We've got a strategy in place, we've got an action plan in place. And we have done an awful lot of work on our carbon baselining. So we know how many tonnes of carbon we need to get out of our operations in order that we get to that zero carbon target. And it's mighty. It's a very large challenge. But the point that we are attempting to make is this is a corporate challenge. This isn't just, it sits within my directorate, but absolutely this is a corporate piece. Now, what we have started doing is ramping up on that piece in particular. We did a consultation with the public. We had over nearly 700 responses actually, which compared to things like the LDP, which had 1,200 responses, it is a fantastic response rate. Very positive. People wanted to see us do more quicker, which is quite natural actually. But when we are discussing this with our cabinet colleagues and when we're discussing it with you as members, it is clear we do need more high visibility of it, and it needs a more corporate push. So some of the things we are discussing is our brand new corporate plan comes out in April. And one of the things we are currently discussing is whether one of our wellbeing objectives is about 2030, is about net zero carbon. So it's front there and centre as a corporate objective. Other things we need to do is that there are 6 or 7 different work streams within the 2030 agenda. You've got transportation, buildings, procurement, land use, that we do need a corporate presence or a senior responsible officer, an SRO for each of those streams, so that we have, again, a more corporate visibility across the piece. And of course, a key thing for us is a comm strategy. We need to move the comm strategy forward on it in particular. Now, we do have a 2030 programme board, and that meets regularly. We've got quite a lot of ambitious projects we're currently developing, the heat network, the Marubeni hydrogen project, lots of refitting. There's a lot going on currently, but there's lots more we can do. Fleet transition, look at our buildings. And in particular, we know 70% of our carbon from the baselining comes from procurement. So again, it's a huge bit of corporate work to do on that. And that's what we've really got to get into the detail about. But that 2030 programme board is now chaired by our cabinet member, Councillor John Spanswick, in order that we get that direct political line back to cabinet. So there's an awful lot. I completely agree with you. We need to do more work on this. I know that in terms of local authorities around Wales, we are seen at the forefront of this with our strategy and the work we've undertaken. Lots more to do. So our climate change manager is going to be very busy in the future. We've now got a programme manager as well for the 2030 initiative. So I'm hoping, Councillor Griffiths, you will see that improvement, and particularly with the corporate plan, we'll then be able to look at performance indicators which more accurately reflect how we are going with our carbon offsetting. Be really good actually if we could have that in as a target. But so hopefully that's provide you with a bit more reassurance. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Janine. Councillor Griffiths.
Yeah, thank you very much, Janine. It's really great to hear that all of that activity is going on, and I welcome all of that activity. On the governance point, Chair, this is maybe one of the largest challenges we have as an authority have, and I do wonder whether we should have, something like even an extra scrutiny committee specifically to monitor that programme board that you just mentioned there. So I'm really looking at the governance aspect of this. So because there's no clear responsibility, if you like, about who owns a cross directorate challenge like this, as it changes so much. So I do wonder, is it something that this group, or it should be COSC, or in fact, my actual suggestion would be, should we go as far as considering whether we should have a green scrutiny committee which looks across all of the activities?
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thanks, Chair. It's just my understanding is that Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee has responsibility for cross-directorate issues and can delegate items for agendas for individual scrutiny and overview committees, but I'm happy to defer to officers if that isn't the case. They can also establish certain working groups to look at specific issues if members so wish, and I know Councillor Griffiths sits on COSC, so perhaps we can take that up with scrutiny officers if that's helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Can I just ask Janina a quick question? Just picking up from Councillor Griffiths' point. Clearly, it is a cross-cutting corporate big issue. And my understanding is that education buildings are a big carbon generator, and that. But the only issue is, for me, I understand, is that because it's a school, the responsibility lies with the governors and everyone else. So it's winning those hearts and minds, I think, in the schools. If you've got a big school population of primary and secondary schools, is ensuring that you can win the hearts and minds of those as well. And, education as well as social service and the rest play a big part in this.
Oh, absolutely huge. I mean, two elements to that. Let's pick up the young learners first of all. They are our future generation and they are our best advocates, actually. And we do an awful lot of education piece about around 2030 with the school children. And they're the ones who are going to help us achieve our aims, actually, because they go homes to mums and dads and literally say, oh, let's recycle, let's do, etc. So again, young learners critical, and an important part of consulting on our 2030 strategy was we had young learners express views about the strategy, how ambitious it was, because really it's about their future generation. So that's the first thing. The second thing about the school buildings itself, yes, the schools are managed by the governing body, of course, but the schools form an important part of our corporate estate because they are our buildings. So we are mindful of this when we are moving forward. Now, whether education establishments themselves are really keen on energy efficiency is quite an important question. When we talk about carbon reduction, they're interested, but when we talk about lower energy bills, they are very interested, and that's how you get their attention. Now, we've already done a very, very successful programme called Refit 1, and we had 18 or 19 school buildings involved, and basically that's an invest to save programme whereby we put in things like, new boilers, PVs, you name it, the LED lighting, etc. And the payback of that is over 6 years. And already schools are saying to us they're having benefits in their energy costs. Now, of course, the difficulty thing with us is the energy costs are significantly rising, but that refit has been successful. And now other schools are coming forward and saying, please, can we be part of refit too? So we are seeing quite a bit of that. And the other thing we're also exploring with the Welsh Government Energy Service is what we're going to do about things like replacing boilers, because of course at this stage we should not be putting gas boilers into primary schools or secondary schools. We should be looking at alternative forms of energy and heating. And the one things we're looking at, and maybe Justin can add a bit more information here, we're looking at ground source heat pumps, and the Welsh Government Energy Service are looking at whether they can help us with the additional costs of doing that work, because factored into our budgets currently is for gas boiler replacement, and of course the heat pumps are much more expensive because we've got to lay all the cabling underneath the ground in school fields, etc., and then you can have that heat source pump. So those are things that we are exploring. That's really important. I think in the main we've got the schools on board because it's an important agenda for education. Still more to do. Gosh, there's so much to do on this agenda, that we could have hundreds of staff working on it, and unfortunately we have a very lean team, a dedicated but lean team. But yes, lots being done.
No, thank you for that, Janine. I understand you're working extremely hard on it, and as Simon Griffiths has said, it is a corporate issue, and if this can be picked up by Alex's scrutiny committee, even on a task and finish group or whatever working, I think clearly you've got the motivation to move forward. So thank you very much for that. That's lovely. Councillor Granville.
Well, Janine is still here. I think perhaps, Chair, going forward, we should work with other authorities, especially schools, where we can, the more we get, because we've had this in Kennelly, the more heat source pumps people sign up to, the cheaper it is, right? And I think if we work across the board with other authorities, especially with schools or buildings, to make it more cheaper and more accessible for us and that authority, the better it'll be.
That's lovely. Before you come in, Georgina, we could speak about this all day. I'm sure you could run a workshop on it for all, and I think we're straying off now. So, but yeah, I agree with Councillor Grant. If you can get quantity in numbers, then it makes it a lot cheaper. And I think, again, this is an agenda for local government could actually deliver significant savings for itself. But we wait and see. I'm sure that's something you're looking at, Janine.
It is. I'll just come in very quickly. Councillor Granville, we've got the Bridgend College coming into our town centre, of course. We've got the pack submitted now, and we want to connect them to our Bridgend District Heat Network, and then phase 2 of the heat network takes it much wider, connecting hopefully the Princess of Wales Hospital and some very large high schools. So we've got some very ambitious plans. I know that hopefully in the spring you'll see the planning application for the Bridgend College coming in. But yes, absolutely, the more we can get onto a heat network, the more we can move to sustainability. You're right, the cheaper that it gets. So that is something, please be assured that we're on that.
Thank you, Janine. Councillor Granville, you got a legacy hand there? Thank you. Samantha, sorry, back to you now again on, we got disabled facility grants, but we've got actually a report on this before us. So do you want to leave that for the time being? Because
Yes, I agree, Chair.
Okay, and I think the last one is then building compliance.
Yes, and all I want to say here is that, again, as you know, the assurance and risk assessment is an ongoing piece of work, and the data that we've based these findings on related to our fieldwork, which took place between July 2021 and January 2022, and we understand that this position has since improved. So I don't know if Janine wants to come back on this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sam. Absolutely, it's to say it's dramatically improved is an understatement, really. We've undertaken significant work on this compliance piece, critically important for us, and our figures are significantly higher and better now. I think at one point we're nearly 98% compliance over the whole estate. But what I would say, Chair, just to make a point, that there is a difference between building safety and compliance, and this is something that I'm always at great pains to point out. Compliance is when we have those certificates, for instance, electrical safety, gas safety, uploaded onto the system. That's fully compliant. That doesn't mean our estate is unsafe just because we're not fully compliant. One is an audit process, the other is estate. For instance, I'll give you an example, committee, because I do think this is an important distinction. For instance, if we have a gas boiler and we go out in a school and we go out and we see there's a fault on it, what happens is that gas boiler is then shut off. The backup boiler is fired up. So the backup boiler runs and the boiler that has a fault on it is shut down. Then we get the service out, we get the boiler repaired. When the boiler is repaired, it comes back into commission. But until we load that certificate onto the system, then we don't get compliance. So being out of compliance isn't the same as safety. Safety is we switch to the backup boiler straight away, take that boiler out of compliance. And that's the same across the piece. For, if we find showers, for instance, in our changing rooms, once we'd finished COVID and we came back, we had to test all showers in changing rooms for Legionella, and we could not put those showers back on or open those changing rooms. So we were sure the Legionella tests had been done and everything was in place. The certificate that comes is at the end. So the difference between safety and compliance, I have to make that one clear, Chair. But what we are trying to do is introduce a brand new system, an integrated works management system, which means certificates can be loaded at source. So if you have your service people out repairing that gas boiler, preparing the certificate, they can scan it and upload it at source. Whereas now the certificate is sent into the authority, goes through the mill, and eventually it's loaded to the system. We need this integrated works management system where we get instantaneous certification, which will improve compliance further. And just another point, Chair, we've also recently been successful in appointing to a Legionella officer, which has really assisted us in some of the work. The corporate landlord team, we've got Justin Kingdon on the call with us today. He's the group manager. We have had some real issues recruiting into that service because they are some really highly specialised structural engineers and building surveyors, etc. It's been a tough call recruiting, and the team are not at full capacity. So they have worked tirelessly on this statutory compliance, and I have to admit, I think they've done this authority proud to get us to the position that we are now in. So I'll stop there.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, that's great. Thank you, Janine. And I think I would hope that gives the members that reassurance that these things are being dealt with professionally and appropriately. So, you know, if you can get that system in, it makes it a lot, you know, a lot more streamlined, really. So that's great. Yeah. I'll allow Justin Kingdom to come in. I don't know what he's going to say, but I think we may need to put a stop on this in a minute. Very interesting subjects, these.
Yeah, just very quickly, Chair. For the tape, I'm Justin Kingdom, Group Manager at Corporate Landlord. Just to echo everything Janina said there, compliance is very much a snapshot window in time, and just to stress that the field work was undertaken at a time where we were emerging from COVID. So, and a lot of our compliance related items were linked to the delivery of services by contractors that were also under furlough conditions. So our ability to service boilers and do certain checks was impeded by contractor availability. That's changed. Our data is significantly better than it was, and we can reassure this committee that it's significantly better than that fieldwork period.
Okay, that's lovely. I think from both of you we got that assurance. If there are no other questions, if no comments, I think again we've had a good discussion and debate on that. You'll see the recommendations. The recommendations is that we note the Audit Wales Governance and Audit Committee reports, appendices A, B, C and D, together with those caveats that we mentioned earlier on, Councillor Betso, in regards to, you know, they are noted with some concern, but we, you know, we will await the response from the council's management and executive, and have an update report in 6 months' time.
I formally move.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Bledsoe.
Yeah, just to clarify, my personal opinion is severe concern, not some concern. If the committee want to state some concern, that's for the committee, but my personal words were severe concern.
Yeah, we've had someone move it that we note the concern, unless you want to make an amendment. Do we have a seconder? Someone prepared second? That we note some concern.
In the absence of a seconder, then could I propose an alternative motion if we can't get a seconder?
So just I'm confused now. So are you asking for a view on reporting a concern or a severe concern?
Some concern.
So I'll second it for a concern.
Thank you. Councillor Betso, did you want to put an amendment?
It's been seconded now, but my amendment would be severe concern on the basis of the seriousness of the report.
Okay, do we have a seconder?
Yes, I would second that.
Was that Councillor Waltham, was it?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. We need a show of hands then in regards to whether the amendment is severe concern. Can I have a show of hands, please? 1, 2. Thank you. Oh, 3. Thank you. 4. Thank you. Those against? My understanding is, and subject to Mike, it's are there any legacy hands here? Those against are Councillor Waltham, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Granville, Councillor Griffiths, Councillor Davis, and Councillor Martin Hughes.
Mr. Chair, could I ask for a vote, because I noticed that there are two hands up that voted for both.
Exactly.
And I believe that one hand went up as you were asking to the changeover. So could I ask for an actual recorded vote, please?
It's quite difficult to do it on screen.
Yeah.
So, Mike, are you happy to do that?
Yeah, happy to do that. 2 seconds. Let me get document open so I can keep track of it all. Okay, so I'll go in turn as it is on the right-hand side here. So first one, Councillor Alan Wathen.
Yes, is this in relation to the amendment or?
Yeah, the amendment, Sophia. Yeah.
Yes, I support the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Alex Williams.
Support the amendment.
Councillor Colin Davis.
Sorry, Chair, I just need to clarify now. So we're talking about the word some or severe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to vote against severe, just to be clear. And
That's okay.
And for some. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Thank you.
It's against severe. That's okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Della Hughes.
For, please.
Councillor Martin Hughes.
Against, please.
Councillor Martin Williams.
He's only here in attendance. He's not part of the committee.
Oh, sorry.
Chair,
Yeah,
I'm just observing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Williams. Councillor Richard Granville.
Against.
Councillor Simon Griffiths.
Against.
Councillor Stephen Bledsoe.
For the word severe.
Gareth Chapman, Chair.
You've got another independent member first.
Missed out.
It's Biden.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'm for.
Yep. Oh, my list is a bit all over the place. I think that's everyone other than yourself, Chair.
Well, I'm against.
Against, okay.
And that's 5-5.
It's 5-5 I've got, yeah.
And I exercise the casting vote, so I'm against.
Okay, thank you. That's 6 against and 5 for 4.
Okay, the recommendation then before obviously the committee is that we note with concern. So put that to the vote, please. All in favour?
Aye.
Thank you. Seconder?
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone against it? Show. Councillor Watham, are you against?
Yes, sorry, Chair, yes.
You're against it?
Yes.
Okay. It's carried. It's not unanimous, but it is carried. Thank you for that. Next report is the Porthcawl Harbour Return 21-22. Nigel, is that you?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can take the committee through this report. It's a very brief report and is essentially providing the audit statements for the Porthcawl Harbour return. And as we noted a bit earlier, the return has been signed as correct. No amendments were made to the return. So it's noted that the it's recommended that the committee notes the audit letter at the Appendix A.
Okay, any questions, anyone? Any comments? Just to say thank everyone for their hard work on this, both yourselves and the external auditors. Can I have someone to move, please?
I formally move, Chair, that we note the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Richard. Someone second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much, Councillor Griffiths. Anyone against? No, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Next report is item agenda 8, the Disabled Facilities Grants Progress Report and Position Statement. Caris.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, this is an update report for you, and it does flow from the previous agenda item that you had on work that Audit Wales did. This is an area that Audit Wales have expressed concerns about in the past, so I suppose this is bringing back to Governance and Audit Committee the current position in relation to this service. If I may, Chair, could I ask Martin Morgans, who's the Head of Partnerships, to just quickly introduce this report for you, and then we're more than happy to take questions.
Oh, that's lovely. Yes, thank you, Caris. Mark, is it Martin? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Hey, Martin.
Thank you. For the purpose of the recording, my name is Martin Morgans, Head of Partnership Services. And as you'll see in front of you today, the purpose of the report is to update the Governance and Audit Committee on the actions taken to progress in terms of improvements to Disabled Facilities Grant Service and provide information on the position to date. Section 3 covers the background in terms of the number of reports that we've brought to the committee or have received from external parties, such as been put us in a place where, in terms of making improvements, you acknowledge that the council needs to be assured that the appropriate controls in place to provide effective oversight of adaptation process, given it is ultimately responsible to deliver the adaptations, and that's been our key driver in terms of improvement. The current situation proposal overviews the current state of the collaboration agreement, some of the challenges we have in terms of staff recruitment, and the work we've done to mitigate that. But as you've heard from previous officers, that in some of these complex roles in terms of skill set, it's very difficult in the current marketplace. It talks also about the development and implementation of the contractors framework and some of the policy procedure processes that we've been reviewed and some of the activity we've done to date in terms of moving us forward. And then it outlines some of the monitoring, recording that we've been looking at in terms of involvement of software system update and a review of our current performance indicators. We obviously then takes account of the well-being of future generations, and the recommendation is to note the progress to date to improve the DFG service and the current position. So happy to take any questions, Chair, in terms of the report and where we are currently.
Lovely, thank you for that, Martin. Any questions? Councillor Granville.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan, for that brief overview. One concern I've got is with the cost element of the grants. Have we factored in that when we put it in grants perhaps a year ago for work, right, an individual, and they've applied for the grant, but yet I'm a bit optimistic that developers or a contractor will come back and say, well, that grant is not enough to do that work. Have we got money in the pocket to oversee that work, or are we saying that the people will have to have a reduced work to be in line with their budget? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Morgan.
Thank you, Councillor Graham, for that question. Yeah, it's the challenge we have across in this sector at the moment, rising prices, as you can imagine. In terms of the DFG jobs, they're predominantly ranged between £7,500 and £12,500. So we have got that price bracket. The concern for us is we've got to work within that envelope, and the more complex challenges is on the larger sort of DFG. Where the barrier top end is 36,000, but we have an opportunity to work with the regional boards in terms of uplifting that where we see needs. But right now, the average DFG between £7,500 and £12,500, we've got the capacity where costs increased to actually support the challenges on the more larger, more complex sort of DFGs, Councillor Granville. But note the issues in terms of rising costs and access to labour and contractors.
Chair, can I just quickly, very kindly come back in as a supplementary, please? I'm also concerned because I don't want to go into practicalities here, but the length of time people are waiting for grants is unacceptable, Mr. Morgan, right? I don't know what the blockage is between us and an outside source, but when I made tentative telephone calls, they were blaming the authority for not releasing the grants in appropriate time. Can we perhaps make sure that we as an authority are moving at a time where people don't have to wait more longer than a 12-month to get grants available from this authority, please?
Thank you, Councillor Granville. That is our aspiration. We want to service the DFGs as quickly as possible in terms of the passport and the grants if need be. But this is the whole point of the actual reintroduction of bringing the DFG process in-house. So we'll have end-to-end control from the grant issuing to the selection of contractor and then working with that citizen. So our aspirations was to in the first year of taking internalising the DFG process with 240 days. And with a movement to 210 days. We've had impacts in terms of COVID, etc. That's delayed that. And a key barrier for us is the selection of contractors. Well, we've gone through quite a strenuous process in terms of developing an internal framework, and we're hoping that's going to shave some significant time off that sort of issue of contractors, but also it gives us the ability to work with those contractors and develop that relationship. So, going in, we look into the latter part of October to go out for the framework, and hopefully in the new financial year we'll have that framework in place, which is going to actually speed up that process for us and mitigate some of those challenges. See, but ultimately our goal is to ensure people can live safely in their own homes where they're going to have the best well-being.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Williams.
Thanks, Chair. I think I'm sounding like an open. Sorry, did Councillor Granville want to come back before I came in?
No, it's you've not put your camera on.
Oh no, my camera's not working. Unfortunately, there's camera issues. I'm afraid my end. So I'll have to liaise with IT on that one. But yeah, I sound like a broken record, but there is some duplication here and crossover, as you'll be well aware, between Governance and Audit and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee. And I can confirm that the operational delivery of the Disability Facilities Grant is on the long-term forward work programme for that committee. So just for members' information.
Thank you. Any other questions? Can I just raise a couple of questions? And the first one is, obviously you had the Audit Wales report in 2017-18, which set out the requirement and council needs to be assured that it has appropriate controls, etc., etc. There was then a regional internal audit service report in 2019-20, which concluded limited assurance in relation to service. Has there been any update from either, obviously we got the report from external, but has there been any internal audit update looking at the controls which are within the service, or is it just left to the 2019-2020?
Currently, Chair, is left to the 2019 report. Our key goal and objective in terms of those controls is managing the process end to end, and the implementation of the framework is that key driver, because that's going to give us the assurance in terms of the contractors we work with, etc. So I think once we've initiated that, it will be a right and appropriate then to look at those controls, and we will look into implement a new software service as well in conjunction with the new financial year, and that's going to give us that better objectivity in terms of performance counters and give us that line of sight. So I suspect that audit will come back once we've got some things in place to give her the appropriate controls. They can then review the new established ones.
No, that's okay, thank you, because I was going to ask whether audit will go in within sort of 9. I don't know whether it's in the plan, because I've got the plan before me, but I think it does need to be reviewed next year once you've got all your systems in place. To look at the the whole process again. So I think Joan's online, so whether that could be picked up in sort of 9 months' time, that would be great. Can you just tell me where Bridgend is in regards in comparison to all the other authorities in Wales in dealing with DFGs?
To be brutally honest, with the published reports, we're down the bottom quartile, okay. Chair, to be in terms of the recording, and with our aspiration and targets of 240, 210, we would be in the middle quartile, the middle sort of part of the bunch, so sit in the middle. It's difficult because we record it in a specific way, and we adhere to the recordings, and I can only say that, in terms of our recording, we stick rigidly to the rules and regulations. But so I think, we've got to just be upfront and honest. That's where we'll be. And I think, if we establish the middle of the ground, it's going to be a massive improvement for our citizens. sub sort of 320 days where we are now is going to be a tremendous improvement. And I think, unfortunately, that figure is slightly skewed in terms of some of the longer, more complex ones, and that's some of the work we're doing in terms of prioritising, breaking it down to small and medium, because you can see, so we can have a more objective view of our performance rather than so the more complex sort of DFGs actually skewing that time to deliver, and it'll give some more sort of food for thought for the committee, etc.
Okay, you know, I feel your pain in regards to DFGs because I fully understand the process on them, but it's just picking up Councillor Granville's point. I think, you know, what we must remember, these are very important to the people who are applying for them, and if they're waiting a very long time, then confidence in the council goes down. And I think the aim needs to be is to boost that confidence. And I think picking up 4.8, and again, you raised the aspirational targets of 240 days for 21-22, and it's currently 320. You've got 210 for 22-23. You know, that is very aspirational. That's taking whatever is nearly 110 off your existing list, you know, and you'll have people coming in and people coming off in that. The only question I pose is, whilst it's aspirational, are you setting yourself up to fail initially? Because, you know, it's okay to be aspirational. The worst case scenario is to come to audit committee or another committee and you've not met your targets. So all of a sudden someone comes in and says, well, actually, you're not meeting your targets, service is failing, etc., etc. So the only question I pose is whether do you need to review that aspirational figure to actually bring it into being more realistic, given that you've not met it in the last 2 years, and I don't know where it was before, so that we're actually honest with the public you serve, because even 320 days, which you've raised there, that's the average. There will be DFGs, as you say, out there, which are over a year, maybe longer waiting, which we don't know. There will be those you'll deal with very, very quickly. But the issue is, what I wouldn't want is you as a service to be setting yourself up to fail time and time again until you actually get not only the computer system, you know, that's just the system. From the report, you know, there's a shortage of staff, there's a shortage of professionals, etc., which again reverts back to the discussion we had earlier about the workforce strategy and where the council sees this as a priority. So I just want you to be realistic if you come again in a couple, 6 months' time when we need to review this again, to actually say, look, we've been honest with ourselves, we've been honest with the public, let's tell them what it really is like. Let's be honest with the council and the councillors where we're at, so that we can actually make some service improvement. When you're at the bottom of the league table, there's only one way, hopefully, you're going to go, which is up. And I think we as a committee need to support you in doing that. So all I would say is just have a little look at what are you over promising and under delivering?
Thank you. I welcome the opportunity for that, Chair, because no one foresaw the issues we had in terms of COVID, then the cost of living in terms of materials and access to contractors with the booming private sector. So yeah, I'd like to look at that if we can. But we were pre all those quite aspirational that we could achieve that, but obviously the conditions in the market at the moment are where we are, but I'm likely, hopefully, we'll review and we'll come back with an honest answer. But as I referred to earlier, in terms of breaking the DFGs into the different supplementals, small, medium, large, we can then also report on those PIs, and you'll see vast differentials. It's where what I mentioned in terms of the skew, the longer term, more complex DFGs, which could involve possibly installing lifts into someone's house, etc., versus the straightforward low-level access shower, ramps and stair lifts, which we have seen improvements, but we can't actually report that because the PAM, the Welsh Government sort of indicator, doesn't allow us to break that down. So we'll do that for internal, and then we can demonstrate that we are in areas achieving those aspirational targets we want to do. So I welcome that review. Thank you.
I know Councillor Bletcher, the only point that I'd make is ask your staff. If you say we've set a target of 210, we delivered 320, morale will go down the tubes. And I think, ultimately we got to accept as a committee that you may not meet your target. But if you said, look, we can deliver, I don't know, 340, but we delivered 320, I'd be tapping you on the back. But because you've not delivered 210, do you see the point? Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Bletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to agree with Councillor Williams, I'm also having camera issues as well. My laptop's got to go back in on Monday, so if it freezes, that's why. I welcome the committee structure, and I hope you can appreciate that I would like to very respectfully disagree with your last point there, and I'd like to actually congratulate Mr. Morgans in setting high objectives and high standards. And the old adage of reach for the stars and maybe meet the moon, but if you aim for the moon, you won't reach the stars. You know, I would support very high standards as targets, but would encourage communication. So if you set a very high target and don't hit it, but you explain to us that it was a very difficult target to hit, then I certainly wouldn't criticise you for setting the high objective. We all want the best here. I think everybody wants the best, and I personally wouldn't criticise for setting a high target, and I would do everything as an elected councillor to give you the tools to try and achieve that. But as long as the communication is there for me, if you set a target that's ambitious and don't reach it, then communicate to us that it was an ambitious target, that it could have been overtly ambitious, but you did everything to get there. So that's just personal opinion. You know, no big diametrically opposed disagreement. However, I would encourage you, Mr. Morgans, to set high targets and try and achieve those. And if you fail on those, then just communicate with us as to why, and you'd certainly retain my support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. Councillor Griffiths.
I'll have to respectfully disagree with Councillor Bledsoe on this one. I think when we talk about staff incentivisation, targets have to be achievable. And if they're not achievable, then morale will go down. In commercial organisations, we often set a target, which everybody gets praise for, and then a stretch target, which you get more for. So I would suggest that any target we set must be achievable. Otherwise, it's just pointless.
Thank you for that, Councillor Griffiths. Any other questions? Any comments? No, all I say, Martin, is continue the good work, and you know, as long as the citizens of Bridgend, you know, appreciate the DFGs, if they can get them a bit sooner than they have at the moment, I'm sure that will be much appreciated. So thank you for that. The recommendation is to note progress to date to improve the DFG service and the current position. And if we could have a report back, I think in 6 months, to see where we're at. Obviously, Councillor Williams is, Alex Williams is currently looking at this as well. And, you know, maybe just, you know, some comments from Councillor Williams as well when it comes back to the committee. But you've got the recommendation. Someone prepared to move, please?
I'll formally move the officer's recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Someone second it? Thank you, Martin. Anyone against? No. Well, thank you, Martin, for your presentation, and thank you, Caris, and we'll see you in 6 months.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Item number 9 is the corporate self-assessment.
Morning, Chair. That one's me.
Hello.
Hi. Just for the purpose of the recording, I'm Alex Rawlin, Corporate Policy and Public Affairs Manager.
Have you got a camera?
Is it not on?
No. I think you. Oh, there we are. That's better.
Oh, very good. Thank you.
That's okay.
I last came and spoke to you in June, and I explained the new requirements on the council around self-assessment. I told you about why we have to do it, what's involved, and explained the performance requirements of Welsh Government, as well as outlining our planned process. We've now gone through that process, and we've pulled together a draft report, which you have in front of you. As we've gone through this, we've worked with members. Of course, we've been here twice, CPA twice, a training session with cabinet members, a slot on the member induction, and a slightly longer member training and awareness session tomorrow, plus the planned cabinet and council discussions next week. We've kept in touch with WLGA and Welsh Government, and as a result, there's been a few changes since I last spoke to you. Firstly, some other councils have got ahead of the game and they've already published their self-assessments. So we've tried to use those to learn from them, and you should be able to see that reflected in our draft report. And secondly, Welsh Government have directed us away from consulting on our self-assessment report. Instead, their preference now is that we list consultation we've done over the year relating to the wellbeing objectives and their impact. So again, you should see that reflected in our draft report. So going on to the draft report in front of you, as you can see, we've tried to keep to around 20 pages, and that's because Welsh Government informally suggested that was their ideal length. I hope you can also see that we focused on using plain English as far as possible. Going through the sections, you can see that we cover the purpose of self-assessment and a bit on context. The main section, the main body of the report then focuses on how we're performing against our corporate plan wellbeing objectives. And those judgments are for wellbeing objective 1, good, 2, adequate, and 3, good. We then introduce how well we are using our resources, and that's both an overall judgment of adequate and 7 individual judgments for the 7 aspects of use of resources, and a further section on governance, which we've judged as good. There's then shorter sections on strategic equality plan and a review of our self-assessment process. And you should see from that that nobody's under the illusion that this year's process has been perfect, but it's worked just about okay in the short time frame we've had. And there are plenty of learning points for next year. We also expect to have lots of other councils' reports to review and additional feedback from Welsh Government, WLGA and Audit Wales that will give us more food for thought for next year. So the timeline from here, as I mentioned, we're reporting to Cabinet and Council next week. Any issues you raise today, I'll be trying to feed in rapidly to that Council report. Then translation and design ready for publication at the end of October. We also have to publish an improvement plan. We've got a draft of that pulled together from going through the process. That'll be tested and discussed over the coming months with publication, hopefully before Christmas.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it. Any questions, any issues?
Okay.
Any feedback?
I will do. Okay. Any questions, anyone? No questions? I've got a couple of questions, Alex. I'm just interested there because my first question was, what was the outcome of the consultation with unions, staff, businesses and the public? And I hear what you say about Welsh Government saying, oh, don't bother, or use what you've had. But there's a requirement under the Act, isn't there, that you actually specifically consult with them? So I don't know how Welsh Government are saying, well, we're imposing it under a statutory piece of legislation, but we're telling you not to do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, I'm assuming that's because it's the first year and they're saying, you know, there's nothing really to consult on. You didn't have an improvement plan, and that's what we really want you to consult on. Seems to be the message that we're getting. It does seem very odd, but also when you think about that sort of looking back, it does feel quite sensible to look at the consultation we've done on those wellbeing objectives or under those sort of wellbeing areas and including those. But I think probably for future years, I mean, I imagine both.
Yeah, and I think it's essential because otherwise the public will say, why do it if you're not going to consult with us? It's a bit of a fait accompli. So, and again, I would have thought local businesses and stakeholders may have something to say as well. So that was quite interesting, really. Each of the headings, obviously the judgments, they've got quite a lot of actions coming out of it. And again, whilst I understand there's going to be whatever it is, the improvement plan or the action plan in regards to doing it, from my reading, there are 39 actions out of the first sort of three sections, and then you've still got another 10 out of the judgment section. So you've got nearly 50 actions, priorities, or whatever you've got to address some of the issues. Again, what I've got a question is, what I was going to ask is, hang on, let me get my notes, if I can find them. What is going to be done? So you've got 6 single headings about what's going to be. So what is going to be done, and is there going to be an action plan to say this is what we're going to split this into? Who's going to do it? And when is it going to be done by? because again, if we got the responsibility of monitoring the assessment of this plan, then I'm not saying that, you know, it should be used, but people need to be brought to task. And, you know, 50 actions, in my view, is immense, given that the number of also other issues you're going to have to deal with as a council is my question is that fair and reasonable? And are you actually going to do any of them justice? Whilst you can have key, you know, I would prioritise them, but, you know, I don't know how you're going to deal with it. So can you just give me some inkling about how you're going to deal with it?
That's a big don't know, but I'm up to 105. 105 at the moment. So you've got the 50 odd you spoke about, and then we've got templates for each of those 7 use of resources workshops, which have got their own list of areas for improvement. And I think it's important to say that these aren't all completely standalone improvements. You know, these include things like you've talked about today, the Springing Forward report. So all of those workforce planning issues and asset management issues are included within those 105. As is improving DFGs, just for one example. So I don't think they shouldn't be a completely surprising and brand new list of 105. But you know, you're absolutely right. There are going to be, this process has certainly identified at least a few of them as completely new. And Caris and I have been discussing how we do that improvement plan, because at the moment it looks exactly as you've described. It looks like an old school sort of template with here's the 105 things we need to do, by who, by when, where are they going? You know, the sort of, you know, the basic way of doing it really. And I think we just didn't quite expect there to be 105 for a start. But yeah, I think we need to sort of group them, have a look at which ones are already underway, and maybe even pull it down to the ones that are just improvement plan priorities.
Okay, no, that's great. You know, in my mind, keeping it simple, stupid is the way I like to deal with it, because I can understand it, and how do the public understand it? So I think, you know, it's very useful, as you said, that you know, you're going to put some effort into actually how you're going to put this over, you know, to the public as well. Councillor Granville.
Yeah, just very one. Can I thank you for the report, Alex? It's very comprehensive, and you've been very thorough. My one concern is help people and communities to be healthy and resilient. And you've got social services is having a real bit of a tune in here. And I would like that colour adequate to be turned up a little bit, just changed. So, you know, we as members can see that there's something going on in that department. Reading this, it's quite, it's not very good reading, to be honest with you, Chair. But at the end of the day, I'm realistic. You know, this is, as you said, this is the first time, but we'll give you, like, as the Chair has said, 6 months or whatever to come back, give us an update, and let's see where we're going, where we're driving, and trying to make headway into these things. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. I hope that Alex and Caris and the team have given our honest reflection here. They're not in any denial about where the authority is, and to mask that, I think, does the authority an injustice. I think if you've got an open, transparent, and you know, view of where you're at, the only way is going up. And I think, you know, it's that whole question is, does the authority know itself? And I think that's where you've got to work from. But a good question, thank you, Richard. Councillor Davis, Colin Davis.
Can I just add to that? Yeah. Obviously, that was a really tricky one. Each section is so huge because we've only got 3 wellbeing objectives. Each one of them contains so many different council services that, you know, you might have one area within it that has a completely unsatisfactory performance whilst another part is excellent. And that's where getting that balance for the judgment was really, really difficult. But I think actually that's a really important issue for the development of our next corporate plan. And maybe our wellbeing objectives at the moment are just too few and too broad.
Yeah, they need to be focused in, presumably. Okay, Councillor Colin Davis.
Thanks, Chair. Just to endorse your action planning comments earlier on, absolutely right. But to be fair, we've talked about this a few times now, and we're doing this meeting alone. I think the report and the officers should be praised for actually looking at other local authorities and seeing how they've done it, which is good. And let's see more of it as we move forward. Also, in respect of Councillor Granville's comment, about the difference between adequate and unsatisfactory, and then listening to Alex, it is a tough call. It is really difficult, and it may be kind of better to be more honest about when you do feel things are unsatisfactory, and in particular, child and family social services. We all know this unsatisfactory, so you may be better off being brutally honest, and we are being brutally honest in that particular aspect. It's not to undo all the other good works that's going on within social services, but the child and family aspect needs to be highlighted, and rightly so. So I'd endorse Councillor Grander's comment about that. But yeah, to be fair, they've looked at what other local authorities have done and they're implementing it, which is good. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Davis. Are there any other comments from anyone? No? Okay. Alex, can I just thank you for presenting the report? As you said, tremendous amount of work's gone into this, and again, it's going to be an organic process. You know, everyone will be learning from this year as we go into next year. But again, thank you and the team really for delivering this for us. I'm sure you can pick up some bits and pieces to go back to when it goes back to Cabinet. So the recommendation before us is to review and provide any recommendations for change. Obviously, we've reviewed it. You can pick up any issues you think needs to go back to the Cabinet in regards to the corporate self-assessment. Someone prepared to move, please?
I'll formally move the officer's recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Granville. Someone second?
Second, Simon Griffiths.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Anyone against any of it? No. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for presenting. See you soon. Not too soon, she says. Next item is item 10, Forward Work Programme 22-23. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, for the recording, I'm Deborah Exton, Deputy Head of Finance. This is a standing item on the agenda. As committee are aware, we set out the proposed reports due to come to committees to enable you to fulfil your functions, which are also set out in the report. Obviously, following the cancellation of the meeting in September, we've had to juggle the forward work programme around a little bit. So there have been a couple of changes to what was originally proposed. We've also already mentioned the delay in the statement of accounts coming back to committee for sign off, and we've raised the complaints report this morning, which we've currently got down as having moved to January, but that may change again going forward now to maybe the April meeting instead. We don't have a meeting in March scheduled at the moment. So we obviously review this before every meeting and obviously make changes dependent on what committee wants during the meeting. So it's just to give you a flavour of what is coming up, and whether or not committee want to change anything around or add anything new onto the agenda.
Okay. Subject to any other members, I think we're at where we're at, aren't we? I think the only issue that may come off is the statement of accounts, but again, I think you as officers will find out sooner rather than later when the piece of whatever regulations have come out or some guidance going to come out in regards to them being released. But I think the proposed agenda is full, unless anyone else has got any comments. No, so the recommendation is that we approve the updated forward work programme for 22-23. Can someone move, please?
I'll formally move, Chair.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder?
I second.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Thank you. Anyone against it? No, thank you. That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Deborah. Last item 11, which is urgent items. There aren't any. You've not been advised any. Can I just say thank you to everyone for attending the meeting today, both the officers, councillors and my colleague independent members. I think there's been some excellent